Good evening, guys. Hope everybody's happy and healthy. Welcome to the first Cannabis Myth Busting sessions. These are very different to the normal webinars we do. They're an opportunity for you guys to ask questions. In the chat, we have some questions that came in before the session. Also, you'll hopefully get a chance. We're going to try and bring you into the room at some point. But we're going to kick off straight away. So thanks for joining us. I'd like to invite Kobus from Grow in Africa to join us. And he's going to start off by telling us a bit about the Grow model. You can see that he has an electricity crisis. So he's in the candle. I think we're all very aware of the load shedding drama that's happening at the moment. So Kobus, thanks for soldiering through. Really appreciate it. Welcome to the Myth Busting sessions. You've been doing some incredible work on in the club model space, and I know that growing for the club model is becoming something that is becoming more of an opportunity for people who want to grow but don't necessarily have the capability or the financial capacity to go into these big grow spaces. But growing sort of legitimately into the club model seems to be an option. So maybe you could just tell us a bit about how that works and how somebody becomes a grower for the club model.
Trenton, thanks a lot, man. Yeah, sorry for the bad video, but I think everybody understands. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I think it's awesome that you're having a myth busting session here, because I think there are a lot of myths and rumors and talk going around the cannabis industry, and it's difficult to discern what is the truth and what not. So basically, we've been involved with the Cannabis Social Club model since December 2018, and it's developed quite a bit over time. And to be frank, we are still 3 years in, still at the level where we can only sort of safely grow cannabis for each other. And if you put that into perspective and you have a look at things like the Haze Club case that's happening at the moment, or that's almost about to happen, and you see the state's response to the Haze Club case, it's almost like we're back 15 years into the past. The attitudes from government are still very archaic, if I can put it lightly. The views are very restricting. So I can explain the whole club model to the guys tonight, but I think to bust the first myth is the club model is definitely not the place for commercial guys to cut their teeth. It's also definitely not a space for the black market to, try and become a legitimate market. The club market at this point is exactly what it says it is. It's a social club of consenting adults that are forming these clubs, and where some people have the ability, space, skill, and knowledge to grow, and other people don't. And at this point, we are just facilitating this process between these parties. But as far as compliance goes, all of these measures that we're putting in place is self-regulatory. It's not like we're basing it off any fixed regulation from government at this point. I don't know how aware you are of the current or the latest affidavit that the SOPs and Correctional Services and Justice Department put towards the Haze Club's case. But I mean, according to them, no one can grow cannabis on behalf of someone else if you do not have a license or a permit. They even exclude someone as your permanent gardener from tending your own cannabis plants. So I think we have to.
There's clearly a very big disconnect between in government at the moment with Tito and Mboweni coming out and saying it's legalized and let everybody grow, and then but let's put that aside, because I know that we could talk about that all night. Let's talk about as it stands. So our blue sky is like, we want this cannabis club model to work. There has to be some kind of recreational framework, whatever that ends up being. But at the moment, I'm a young grower. I've got 6 to 8 plants in my garden. I'm super passionate about growing. Going into a commercial farm is just so far away. But I really want to grow it and try and make a living out of it. What are the steps that people have to do, it's not just a question of just growing a few plants and then importing weed into the clubs. There's a process. Maybe you can just take me through that process.
Massive process. We just we just help facilitate the agreement part of it. To make the contracting easy. So each club has their own specific rules, but it's basically you have to be a member of a club first. And now, if I say a member, you don't just tick terms and conditions and become a member. You have to be an active member. You have to participate in member workshops. You have to attend meetings, and based on your member needs assessment at a club, the club knows what type of cannabis a member requires, how much they consume. And based on this needs assessment, they then start looking for cultivating members that are already members of the club. So from Grow Africa's side, all we've done is we've taken good agricultural practices, international standards and local standards, and we've proposed some compliance measures that have to be put in place, like signage for your site, demarcating areas that you would now have to be leasing to another member, and then some very strict cultivation processes in the form of a grow diary, then recording all of these processes and cultivation methods that you take the members plant through. So the best case scenario in this case in a Grow Africa model is that you might be leasing a space in your grow site to another member to make it their private property, and you might be contracted by that member under direct employment to grow their plant for them. So in the end, you will be performing a cultivation service and leasing a property to another member, and you will be reimbursed for that. So, just to put it into perspective, it's not like you just said you can't put up a tunnel, put in 100 plants, and then go and look for a club where you can drop your weed at. You need to build that relationship, and you need to fill the need of the members of the club, because all a club can do is to facilitate the needs of its members. So these clubs are very strictly governed. All of them are non-profit companies, which means they are independently audited. All the cultivation fees are, like I said, lease fees that are reimbursed, and direct employment salaries that are paid. So on those amounts, there are taxes liable, pay as you earn, UIF. So I'm mentioning all of this just to let guys know there's no way that you can try and grow for a club model on your pseudo name or on a.
Well, I think we've lost Kobus. Okay. Sadly, we've lost him. I think the load shedding has got the better of him. Guys, I think let's start the rest of the session. So the rest of the guys are waiting. You still there, Kobus? So we lost you for a sec.
Yes, sorry.
I'm back. I have a question that came through for you from Jeff Verlinden. Hi, Jeff. How's it? Nice to have you on board. It looks like he has left the room. He was asking to share his view on the Haze Club. So I think he's come back into the room. Sorry, with the load shedding, this is just the nature of the beast. So let's just see if he can come back. But I think are you there? You still there?
Hi, I'm back.
Okay, cool. There was just a question about your view on the Haze Club. If you could share that with us. I don't want to get too bogged down in there, but if you could just share what you think where that's going.
I've got my legal team with me for a compliance weekend this weekend, and we won't even be able to answer you if we had the whole weekend. The legal system is so bloody complicated. So what's happening at the moment is the declaratory order that they filed for, so that government could basically say what they are doing is legal. The government's response, or SOPs and Justice Department, brings up so many conflict of facts that this thing must go to trial. If the case is, if their club model is declared not within the boundaries, like illegal, then they've asked for a 24-month postponement until the laws that make it illegal are changed. So this is not a simple matter of it's going to kick off next week and it's going to finish quickly. It's going to be dragged out, and more importantly, so every case is judged on its own merit. So there will be certain things that are highlighted with the Haze Club's case, but almost nothing will apply to the next case, if that makes sense. So it's so difficult that these guys and poor Neil and them have been placed up there and, you know, almost the scapegoats for this industry. But it could be very possible that the judge might say, I can't make a ruling until there's proper legislation in place. And, you know, then we're talking 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line. So
Yeah.
I don't know. My simple answer is I don't know. We've learned a lot from reading the affidavits from the SOPs. We understand and are very confused by their point of view because their affidavit contradicts what their point of view is in the proposed legislation that they were part and parcel to writing. And we are a little bit confused, but as always, we are just complying to what we can and moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Kobus. Listen, thanks very much for joining us. I think ultimately, you know, what I want to achieve out of this is that, you know, if the club model does go forward, which we are super hopeful that it does, then growing into a cannabis club model could potentially be a way of scaling up. Thanks so much for joining us, Kobus, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Trent.
Guys, if you just want to sort of switch your cameras on and bring it to the room, and we'll get this the Q&A session going. Got some questions coming in already. So I'm just going to do a quick round. We have Natie Ferreira, who has been growing cannabis for 25 plus years, seasoned grower, has a deep experience in scaling. We have Harry, who is the head chemist of CBD Full Spectrum, a SAPA registered farm. And then we have Ash, who is the head cultivator at Druid's Garden, who are also a SAPA registered farm. So, yeah, it's over to you guys. I think we've got some questions coming in. So, from Corsi, well, first of all, I just want to sort of demonstrate what we're trying to get to here. So, we're essentially trying to figure out, you know, how we scale, how we go from growing a few plants to a field, whether it's indoor or outdoor. We're really trying to figure out how we scale things up. You know? Ultimately, I think every grower has a dream to grow on a commercial scale, and whether that's actually realistic and whether it's actually what people think it is. So I think if we can start unpacking that. So the first question I have is, how much money does it cost to start a commercial grow? So it's quite a broad question, and I'm sure it can't be answered in one thing. But I know the answer, you can't give the answer lots because that's too easy. But, you know, roughly to start a commercial grow, what are the rough kind of figures you're looking at? Ash, maybe you want to start with that.
All right, how's it going, guys? Yeah, that's like you say, it is quite a broad question. The basic answer is the application is about 30,000 Rand to put in your application. But to have a compliant facility that meets all the requirements for SAPRA, this is now obviously in South Africa, we only are able to get a medical grade license, which means you would have to have a medical grade compliant facility. And the costs that come in for that are obviously quite high. You know, your grow area needs to be fairly controlled environment. Your drying and packaging and processing areas need to have HVAC systems and good clean air. All of these systems cost millions of Rand. So you're looking at mega millions, nothing below 15 million if you really want to have a small scale farm that's fully compliant.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. I'm just going to keep plowing through the questions in no particular order. What is a master grower and where can you study to become one? That's an interesting question. I'm going to put that to you, Natie. What is a master grower? First of all, I think you're on mute, Natie.
Trenton, how's it, guys? Trenton, we don't know. We don't know what that is. I think it's something that's why we use the term we're growing master growers to see what comes out. I think we've planted the seeds for them, and hopefully out of that will come the master growers of the future. If you look at a compliant grow at the moment, you also look at a minimum of a bachelor level degree, unfortunately, before you can be classed as a master grower in a compliant grow. So that's sort of a minimum requirement, unfortunately. But we look at guys that's been growing in the closet. There were no formal way to study cannabis farming in the past. So we we judge people by years and by what they put on the table. Show us your bad kind of thing. So yeah, there's no firm definition, but there is ways definitely to now train and become one. I'm sure that we will soon. We already have the master growers of the future in our classrooms, reading the books, putting seed in the ground out there already.
But I guess the differentiating factor is, you've got a head grower, and that is somebody who oversees the grow part of the facility, which is a job, as you say. You've got to have, a certain amount of science and agricultural background. But then there's this term that's loosely used for somebody who can grow like weed amazingly. And essentially, you can't study to become a master grower. It comes through years and years of experience. You don't go and do a master grower course and then become a master grower. It doesn't work like that. So I think that's a perception that people have, that you can go and do a master grower degree and then you're a master grower. It's the same as working in the film industry. If you want to be a director, you need to spend a lot of time building your portfolio up and building experience. So it's not just about having that certificate, it's also about having experience. Am I right?
Yes, for sure. I mean, and that's what it's about. I mean, cannabis it becomes a very complicated plant. I mean, it takes you years to master the art of growing cannabis throughout the year, throughout seasons, with different strains and so on. I mean, it really takes years. I often say cannabis, we call it weed. It's the easiest plant in the world to grow till that day you grow it for money. And everything changes. I mean, Ash can come in with what an SOP means then in that kind of mission. But I mean, things go wrong, and you have to go through all those scenarios. Say, listen, I've been there, done that. I've chucked an entire greenhouse because of PM or whatever, that you've been through the bottom too, and you've been through the top to really be classified as that. That's why I say I don't think we have them yet. Or if they are, I mean, there's a few of them around in the world that are true master growers, but it's not something that you find in every grower. No.
So, Lisa, why do we need to grow in a tunnel? Who wants to take that one? Harry, take that one. I've got the next one for you, Harry. So, those dogs, those are. Okay, let's go to you, Natie. I just want to quickly ask you on that one. So I know this is something you can answer quite well. Why do we need to grow in tunnels? Why do we grow in tunnels?
Okay, we want to control the climate some way or the other. For us in the Western Cape, the main thing that we want to control is wind. We also have some control over insects in the process, some control over temperature. Up country, you get some other problems. You get serious hail. You get possible rain damage. We also can control humidity to some extent, but it's difficult. It becomes precious. And then also, we've got a contained area where it's easier to also secure it, because that is also a big problem in outdoor growing, that you need to secure your facility. I think I've touched on all of them, but that's sort of mostly what we're looking at, why we would grow under the sun. Obviously, we control the sun, and we've got polytunnel, we've got the diffused light also. That is the main reason why we would go also. One of the main reasons why we would go plastic. There's some beautiful middle grounds also between tunnels and other undercover options.
Yeah. Okay. Right. This one's for you, Harry. What is GMP, and how many standards are there, and which one do we have to comply with? This is from Diana.
Okay, thanks. GMP is generally good manufacturing practices, and these actually involve the way that you, starting all the way from your planting, from your cultivation, you have to be able to make sure that what you're doing, you make sure you put it down, everything is put down, so that whoever comes through, wants to do whatever you are doing in the growing process, can be able to follow up with that. And the GMP practices are actually the ones which, like for instance, on our medical side, we'll be looking at labs which are certified GMP, meaning that these are standard procedures that you have to be able to follow to have your product accepted anywhere else in the world. And the major problem that we have currently in South Africa is there are actually few labs which are actually GMP certified. And I think at the moment we've only got, it should be Afriplex, which is only GMP certified at the moment.
I just want to ask a question in terms of GMP. So I've heard the argument from some people that GMP is an international standard that comes in from America and Europe, and those standards are being imposed into our environment, and that they're not necessarily relevant. You know, we can grow outdoors. We don't need these heavy standards. The challenge at the moment is obviously that in order to get an offtake agreement, we have to stick to those international standards. But do you think GMP that comes in from an international perspective is relevant? And do you think it will always be something that we need? Ash, you've been doing quite a lot of work with Australia and exporting stuff to Australia. So maybe you could both just give me some feedback on that.
Yeah. Okay, go for it.
Okay, I can just put one point. I think probably GMP is very important, so that most of the time you will be able, if you are able to relate to other standards from other countries, then it means definitely, like if you are growing medicinal cannabis, you are able every time to produce something which is consistent, something which is always the same, which we find that most of the people are not able to produce, you know. So like, for instance, if you are to get an offtake to a country like outside South Africa, I mean, you have to be able to be supplying people with the same type of product every time. And when it comes to medicinal grade, you find that it's actually very difficult if you're not following GMP protocols.
Okay. Ash, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I 100% agree. You know, the GMP, the biggest factor is traceability. So it's recording all the data, the type of nutrients you're using, how much nutrients, all of these kinds of record keeping, which will then give you a status of GMP. So it's the environment you're growing in right through. So with your levels of different grades of certification, GMP is our South African standard. But if you go into Europe, you're going to get EU GMP. So a different level of certification. So you're 100% right when the question came forward as to different certifications will allow you to sell to different countries and to different clients. In different countries, you need a certain level of certification just to import your product into the country or the continent, like Europe, for example. It is difficult at the moment with the industry being very new. Our GMP certification in South Africa is struggling to be recognized internationally. And I think it will take time for the international market to really understand that we can produce quality products in this regard. So our level of certification is under scrutiny internationally. And we need to definitely lift our game in that regard. On the same respect, we have GACP, which is not the processing side, but the cultivation side. And I think that often gets mixed up, and it's something that needs to be looked at by our off-takers. So the clients, in the end of the day, they need to determine whether they need a product that is grown to GACP standards or EU GMP standards, because there's a big difference. And the control of the environment and those kinds of factors, the air quality control that's in the environment that you're growing your plants, for example. You know, does it need to be EU GMP standard where you are now have HEPA filters and the environments where plants are grown in is almost like a sterile environment? Or if you follow more GACP standards, you just have to have good clean air that has a certain level of filtration, you know, like just virus netting and that kind of thing. So you can use fresh air to cultivate your plants. On that regard, you can almost go for a semi-indoor outdoor kind of environment, and it still produces a good quality product. So internationally, those standards and those benchmarks haven't really been ironed out, in my opinion, to the fine degree that they need to be. And there are a lot of international pressure when you say like enforcing us to do things that may be not required. I do feel that myself. I agree with you on that point, because it is possible to grow good quality products, cannabis flower, for example, in a non-EU GMP environment. So those standards need to be really looked at and considered very carefully in the future. You know, the entry point level, like we were saying earlier on, to fulfill the requirements of SAPRA at the moment is quite restricting because of the kinds of environments that we need to reproduce to have a very controlled environment for the cannabis to be cultivated in. And it may not necessarily need to be that strict. Of course, there needs to be control measures in place, but the level to that is needs to be determined, in my opinion. And the current rating system is very restricting.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. I agree. One for you, Natie. It's a little bit off scaling, but from David Hendricks. Is Durban poison South Africa's only landrace variety? Obviously not, but maybe there's some you could shed some light.
No, yeah, it's not. It's one of our big land races that we claim to be a land race. There's many others. I mean, there's a lot of debate around it. I think we also need to just look at the term land race, because I think in cannabis terms, it is quite confusing, because what we see as a land race is really like a heritage breed, like a heritage type seed that has got a long history, and they're normally quite stable genetics. Land race in all other horticulture means a breed that you create for your specific conditions. So it's just a bit of a difference. But if we refer to land races, we talk about these heritage strains that are hopefully still out there. And I mean, there's a lot of debate around it. When these things have started to change, when other genetics start to come in the country, whether these old strains are still protected. We don't know. A lot of research needs to be done around that. Research that is really just there to feed our need to know around these things. The commercial potential, I think, have been milked out of it to a large extent. And we need to now just dive into the genetics and start profiling these strains and find out what we're actually looking for. So yes, there's a lot to be done around it. We've got, I think, we'll find hundreds of adaptations and quite maybe stable genetics around South Africa, Swaziland, Lesotho, Transkei, up the coast. I think it's an amazing journey that's lying ahead of us to find these old genetics.
Yeah, go.
Just a quick one, Trenton. I think on the GMPs, there's probably just 6 important takeaway messages on the importance of GMPs. Probably first will be, like you'd find in every country, it's actually a government requirement that any manufacturing facility has GMPs. And also, secondly, they ensure the quality of your product. And thirdly, you kind of like, as a manufacturing company or facility, you find you reduce any sort of like rejects and recalls, and you maintain your manufacturing consistency. And also you get like satisfied customers, and having satisfied customers definitely means you maintain your company image and your reputation as a whole. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point, Harry, because at the end of the day, you know, if you're scaling up and you're growing a product that's going to be used medicinally, especially, or something that's psychoactive, there just have to be standards. As simple as that.
Exactly.
You know? There was a good question from Sandy. She said, "Can you sell cannabis to someone within South Africa?" The answer is no. You can sell CBD, but you can't sell CBD that's grown locally. You can only sell imported CBD. But essentially, selling cannabis with THC is absolutely illegal at the moment, although lots of people are doing it. There's a question here from Frankie. If you receive a license, how many plants can you grow, and who sets the standard of the quality of the export? I'll put that to you and Harry, maybe Ash and Harry.
So your license, the quantity of plants that you are allowed to cultivate on your license will be determined by the facility that you set up. So when you do an application for a cannabis cultivation license, you have to put forward your entire facility layout, what you are putting forward to be able to cultivate if you get the license. Then they will undergo an inspection. They will then determine the areas of cultivation that were approved for you to cultivate in, and that will then determine the amount of plants that you're able to cultivate. So it's very much down to the budget that you have in order to build a facility. From what I've seen, SAPRA has given the licenses to the area of cultivation space that is up to standard. So it's pretty much determined by your budget.
Now, just a question on that. So you know, you have a farm and you have 2 tunnels, and they both get registered with SAPRA, and you've got another 3 that are being built. I guess it's the same process, but it's on the same license. So what would you just apply for an extension or an additional?
What they would do is obviously the time of your inspection, what they've actually physically seen at the time of the last inspection is what they will approve. If you have plans to extend your facility, you would have to then put in an application for them to come and inspect and approve the new extensions to your facility. I haven't seen a limitation in that regard. It's only been a limitation in the size of the facility. So you have to have an operating facility that's able to go into production before you can have it approved by SAHPRA.
Okay. Linda is in the background there. There was a gentleman that was going to come on, and we're going to try and bring him in with the question. So Linda, whenever you want to do that, that would be great. I would just a quick question for you, Natie. This is from Motlasi. What is the maximum level of THC that a cannabis plant can reach?
It's we don't from the laboratory. I mean, if we look at GC as gas chromatography as a standard there, and not near infrared spectrometry, where we find some crazy results on very shiny, fancy pieces of plastic equipment going around the country. I would say what we found, and I don't have Brenda, our lab director, on hand to check. I think it's around 28% that we found in South Africa on gas chromatography. We are expecting to go over 30. We've seen on NIR way over 30, but I mean we're not taking that seriously. They need to be lab verified. So 28 is the grail at the moment, I would think, in our laboratory.
Okay, great. Another question from Jeff. Harry, can I just? Yes.
Can I just add on to what Natie said? I think probably I think Natie is talking about probably what they've got in South Africa. But if you look around what has been reported, they've actually reported a 56% THCA in a single specimen of, I think it was Gorilla Glue, grown from seed. But I'm not quite sure. I think some of those figures are a bit too high to believe. But also there's the highest cannabinoid levels. I've seen lab reports of first-hand 33% THC from a Malawi Landrace and 16% CBD from a Lebanese Landrace. So you'd find that people generally report different percentages, but I think the one for 56 was just a bit way too high. I think Natie can agree with that. Yeah.
Great. So just following on.
We don't even see that in good hash. I mean, hash you aim for 50%. It's like really, really good full mouth hash. You come to 50%. So that is just I think it's just chemically impossible. But I would like to see it how that would look.
Cool, Harry. Just following on from that, Jeff was asking, can you talk about the Section 21 approvals for local cannabis patients? I know you guys are doing that at the moment, and are they locally cultivated products?
Okay, like if we, oh shit, my lights. I think there's a bit of load shedding there.
Cool.
Yeah. So what has happened with us? The Section 21s, we've made the applications to SAHPRA, and what happens is like SAHPRA, they determine like the illness or the ailments which the patients are coming to us with. They're not just taking like anything. They probably look at, so far we've had 6, I think 6 have just been approved, if I'm not mistaken. 6 have been approved. And, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, no problem. We can hear you. Now we can't hear you. We've lost you.
We lost you.
We'll come back to you if you can just try and fiddle with your mic there. Ash, another question. What is an offtake agreement? What does it actually mean?
Okay, so an offtake agreement is basically a service level agreement. Is a client that you've signed up in writing and you've got a contract to supply them with a specific quantity of flower or product per year. Normally, it's a more than 1 year contract, but generally a 12-month contract can be instated, and it's just an agreement between a grower and a client to provide them with certain standards of medical flower.
Okay. And how easy are those to get? I mean, obviously those are restrictions that SAPRA have put on, that we can grow cannabis, but we can't sell it in our own country, which is bizarre, but we won't get into that. How easy is it? Because, you know, essentially, my view on it is that we had, and still to some degree had, a competitive edge. South Africa has a global reputation for being a cannabis grower. You know, there's all kinds of stats, including, you know, 1 in 4 halls that Interpol used to confiscate could be traced back to South Africa, etc. So we've already been exporting cannabis and still are illegally on you know, tons and tons of it every year. But as legislation drags its heels, you know, we were talking earlier with Kobus about the disconnect between politicians, and no one really knows what's going on. It's a mess at the moment, to be honest. But so that's slowing the market down. One of our competitive advantages is our labor costs, are the UUAs, are the land that we live in, and we do have people who can grow, are experienced growing. But as the longer it takes, the more our competitive edge dwindles as other African countries come online, as Mexico and Asia come online. So do you think that these offtake agreements are going to last very long? You know, how much interest do you think there will be internationally for our cannabis?
Yeah, I can definitely say there's been a lot of offtakes thrown around, and a lot of people very excited about potential offtakes, and big numbers being thrown around over the last 2 years. I've heard massive offtake agreements that were potentials that never actually came to fruition. So to have a true offtake with a serious client that actually is going to take the product once it's ready and meet standards is difficult. It is also very difficult to meet the standards of the medical grade clients. So medical grade standards on these flowers is very, very strict and stringent. So it's one thing to get the offtake. It's another thing to meet the quality requirements for these offtakes. And I think you're right. There's a lot of competition coming our way for South Africa, with the Eastern European countries coming online, able to also produce cannabis for quite a low cost. And then the South Americas, Mexico's, and those places that also have good climates, they also are able to produce at a very low cost. And I think we've basically got the next year or two to really put a good foot in the market and show our presence and prove our worthiness here in South Africa, which we definitely have, and we have the capability of. And I think that the next year is going to be a big proving ground for South Africa in the international market.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I have a question here.
So what did you do?
We can hear you, Linda. We can hear you. Linda, we can hear you. From Indria, I hope I got that right. What qualifications do you need to work as a trimmer on a farm? Either of you.
I can answer that question. So on our farm, we trim our flowers by hand. So we have a trimming staff that come in to do the trimming, which is a very tedious and hectic job. It takes a lot of focus, a lot of attention to detail, in a very, very clean and sterile environment. So it's not an easy job, trimming. You don't need any particular qualification to become a trimmer. We've trained all our trimmers in-house. We do have a strict set of requirements in the interview process. We ensure that no one has a criminal record. We don't employ people that smoke cannabis. Obviously, that just helps us avoid working with a dangerous hazardous product that can get out onto the market, and mitigating those risks. So we try not to employ people that do smoke. We don't do tests on our trimmers, but we do chat to them beforehand. And so the basic entry level for trimming is just lot of focus requirements. You need to be able to sit and have attention to detail for quite some time, and just a passion for the plant, I guess. Nothing in particular.
Cool, great, thanks. We just ran a poll, and what are the biggest challenges with growing? We've got 21% saying lighting, 14% saying nutrients, 50% saying pest and disease management, and 14% I never have any Zol left because I smoke it all. So you can see why some people grow just for themselves. I want to talk about scaling up. I want to talk about the challenges, because there are a lot of guys who have been growing for many years. They grow at home. They obviously are confident that they have got to a certain level, but it's a very big shift to be growing from, sort of 10 plants at home going up to 100, 300-400 plants. What are some of the challenges to scaling, and what are some of the things that you have to keep an eye on? Ash, you kind of learned, a lot on the job, and compliance. And you've told me many times that you spend more time buried in paperwork and compliance than you do the plants now. But the journey you've gone through and have articulated, very beautifully on many occasions. What are some of the challenges with scaling up? Natie, you've put hundreds of plants into deserts. What are some of the things that people need to understand? Because to scale up, it takes a certain kind of person. It's not, you can't just grow dank buds and be a hobbyist grower. You have to be disciplined. Also, when you're moving into a commercial space, you're dealing with people who have put a lot of money on the line. So it's a very high pressure job. So maybe you could just both give us some insights. And Harry, I don't know if I can see you come back into the room, so I'm not sure if you're still there, but your camera is off, but maybe you can just try and get on. We'd love to have you back. But if you guys just give us some insight into the challenges of moving from small scale to large scale. Natie, maybe you
can go first.
I'm just going to jump. Yeah, I'm just going to jump in. I think Ash can give us more of the detail and some tips of how to run it. I just quickly want to get your poll. I think the one item there that was missing is vandalism and theft. I think that is for us definitely in the Western Cape and probably around the country, something that you have to consider. The moment you move into bigger facilities, the moment you're scaling up, SAPRA's got one requirement for security. You need more than that often in most areas than what SAPRA's minimum requirements are just to secure your grow. I mean, that for me is something very, very important to keep in mind.
Just a small fact there. I was having a conversation with a head of security who deals with the cannabis space, and he was saying that they're actually seriously looking at using helicopters to move the cannabis around, because the insurance on the ground security is so high because of our cash in transit issues, that flying in the helicopter is actually more cost effective. I guess the advantage is it's fairly light as well. So just a side note. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah, look, it's just the cannabis is psychoactive off the plant. We know that is what the issue is. With our good grapes too, you can't drink the grapes off the plant and get drunk from them. A cannabis plant, you can literally pick in the morning, dry it in the sun, and smoke it in the afternoon. So it is a valuable item to pick and steal. If it's growing in the field and people have got some form of access to it, they will steal it. So yeah, it's a big issue. I think for me, scaling up, the biggest challenge is that you get a multiplication of every single thing you do. So your influence, if you do something wrong and if you do something right, that gets multiplied by the amount of plants. So if you've got a problem in your field, it also gets multiplied very quickly. So I often say, as you scale up, if you used to go into your grow room once a day, as you scale up, that becomes twice a day, that becomes 3 times a day, 4 times a day. No matter your level of automation in your grow, you need to have your feet in there, or your master grower or head grower needs to have their feet in there. I still believe that's the best fertilizer in the field, is the farmer's feet. And you've got to get out there and monitor and absorb and observe, and then make your decisions based upon that. As you've got the paperwork to back that, I think you've brought in the SOPs, which makes this a lot easier. if you have to scale it and everything. I think that I'm going to give over to you to just come in there on
yeah, absolutely. 100%. Tying in with the paperwork, when you scale up, it's all about planning and being prepared. Like you said, you've got big investors with big money on your head, so you've got a lot of pressure to perform and make sure that you give results. So if you're not prepared and planned correctly, you're already setting yourself up for failure. So meticulous planning, we have a planting schedule. It's part of our SOPs. That's an SOP is just your standard operating procedures, just to catch everybody up on that. That's just it's part of your SAPA requirements, is to have all your systems in place, and how you do everything needs to be formalized. So you need to have a formal structure on every single process that you do in your facility. And I can tell you that that was the biggest part of our application for me. Getting our license was creating all the paperwork and documentation that's required to have complete traceability and accountability as well for all the stages along the way. That's also for your quality management. When you upscale, it's sometimes very difficult to see the problems that come in. And by the time you notice an issue, it's normally a very big problem. So if you've got all your quality processes and manuals in place and systems in place to record everything and traceability to who was doing what, when, and why, then you've got a good reference point to look back on and fix mistakes that might have come in along the way, and trace down problems that cause big issues later on in the grow. Sometimes problems that come in right in the beginning of the grow only start to take impact and have a big effect later on in the grow. So to have all your documentation in place, recording all the information is a big step to helping you control and contain those problems, and also improve each round. Each grow, you're going to always be aiming to improve and to up your yields and to up the quality of your product. So definitely planning is your major point of focus, I'd say, for scaling up. That's your first step. So your SOPs will, the way I've written ours is to have a planned process from beginning to end, starting with your planting schedule. So if you've got an offtake for how many kilos, now you've got to create a planting schedule to fulfill those requirements. And planning that out a good 12 months ahead of time is crucial. So the next big challenge for scaling up, of course, is consistency, like you were saying. And that's, I think, is one of the biggest challenges of scaling up. And to, you've got to really know your thing when you're selecting your genetics and are able to propagate those genetics out to have consistent quality throughout your grows. So that's definitely, I'd say, one of the biggest challenges when it comes to scaling up.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, guys. Great input. Harry, we got you back, I think. Hopefully we can hear you. Let's just check your mic.
Hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we got you. Yes, we got you. I want a question for you from Monde. What are the grounds that your license can be revoked by the issuer?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Sorry,
on what grounds could your license be revoked by the issuer? In this case, SAPA. What would give them a reason why they could retract the license?
Okay. Well, there's a lot of reasons why actually a license can be revoked. For instance, if you're not following your simple SOPs, like as Ash mentioned, you should, as a facility, have SOPs which are in place. That's one thing that SAPRA actually comes to check once your facility is already up and running. And also simple other stuff like maybe growing some plants in undesignated areas. That actually can get your license thrown out. And even simple things like the hygiene. What happens, like people going to the tunnels, when they go into the tunnels, are they properly dressed to go into those tunnels? The people who are in the trimming rooms, are they properly dressed and everything like that? So your license can actually be revoked by just a simple thing. Yeah. So you have to always follow all the rules and regulations and whatever you do should always be documented. Like, for instance, anything goes wrong in the facility, you have to document it so that when they come to you, they ask about what happened, you can actually show them what has happened. If you don't show them, then you can actually get your license being revoked.
I think the thing to remember here, guys, for everybody watching is, growing cannabis at scale is a job, and it's a highly organized job. It's not something you can sort of saunter in. It's a proper profession, and there's a lot riding on it from the end user in terms of medical, all the way down to recreational users. So it's a big responsibility. Natie was saying, can we ask a question? I think it's just been so from Jordan. Can you, Natie, you're going to answer this? Can you fast? This is what it says. Can you fast a goat on water and cannabis for it to produce hash out of its cow, which I presume is
yeah, I just thought you'll answer that one for a bit of fun. Jordan, I would think the short answer is no. I don't know if you want to scale this to any level of scale, whether it's a scaling question or not, but I think, well, a goat is a mammal. It does have an endocannabinoid system. All the cannabinoids they dissolve in solvents. But somehow our stomachs, microbes, does take them up. So I don't think there will be many cannabinoids left in the excrement. But it's well worth a trial. I'll run a trial. If I can find some goats, I'll send you some hash, and you can maybe give us a review on that.
Right, on to the next question. David Hendricks is asking, can you scale up and still be regarded as craft cannabis? And what is craft cannabis? Who wants to answer that?
Okay, I'm going to jump in there quickly. And I think for me, the question there lies in terroir, like in the wine industry. When you can get to a point where we can capture whatever terroir means for an area, and we can start to grow cannabis that you can say, listen, this cannabis comes from Henopsrivier or Franschhoek or Vredendal or whatever, and you can also tie it to a specific grower, that the grower's quality can stand out, that you could, this is Jason's bud, or whoever the grower is. When you can get to that level where you can distinguish craft cannabis from the rest of the cannabis that's available, be it medicinal or whatever, by these kind of distinguished characteristics. And those are difficult to quantify. In the wine industry, it's getting very, very technical. You can measure a lot of these items and tie them down to the terroir. We don't have it in the cannabis industry yet, but we're very excited to get there. And yes, obviously a good grower will be able to scale that up. We've seen some very, very good craft wine coming out of the wine industry at a scale. We've seen craft beer coming at scale. Craft doesn't need to mean small quantities.
Yeah. Okay, great. Mabagosi, how can we get our entrepreneurs license? Those who have just learned about the industry and who have been operating illegally. So essentially, how does somebody cross over from the illegal side into the legal side? That's a big question we always get. Who wants to take that one? Ash, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll give you some input on that one. The industry is limited in entry because of the cost of the facilities that are acquired by SAPRA. So it's difficult for anyone to just jump in and say, we're going to get the license now. But I would say the best way for somebody that's got a passion for the industry is to maybe go on some courses. Cheeba Africa, I know you guys also take people on tours of farms and link people up. So maybe just getting involved in the network of people and seeing who's out there and exposing yourself to the network might help you get inroads into a facility, an existing facility. I'd say that would be your quickest route into a licensed facility right now. I think as time goes on, hopefully the laws and legislations will catch up and there will be more entry points for the recreational market. And I think once that happens, more growers will be able to jump on board. There is a difference between medical and recreational, and the difference is just on compliance leg. medical doesn't mean that it's better quality. Ultimately, you can get really good recreational quality. It's just a level of compliance, the types of facilities that you're using, the equipment that you're using. And so I think that hopefully when the laws and legislations come to front with the recreational, people just need to be a little bit patient. And I think the entry point will be open to a lot more people at that point.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I just want to, can I just jump?
Yeah.
Clinton, and I just want to say to the people, for now, educate yourselves. Just get out there and learn as much as you can. In those classrooms, you build your network. Those networks are going to mean jobs in the future.
Absolutely. So I've got two quick questions before we end. Harry Tandakolo is asking, what qualifications do your quality managers have?
For the quality manager, basically the entrance level will be a BSc scientific degree, BSc like in chemistry or biology. That will be just the entrance level, for a quality manager.
Okay, great. On a final note, Susie has asked, why do you gents, or I suppose it's supposed to be what do you gents love about your jobs? So let's just start, we're going left to right. Ash, what do you love about your job? Assuming you love your job.
I love my job. Every day when I drive home, I think about how grateful I am for the opportunity that I have been presented. I've had a passion for cannabis in a recreational as well as a medicinal side almost my whole life. So I've got a huge passion for cultivating this plant, obviously getting into the genetics and creating spaces to get these plants to express their potential to their fullest. That's what really gets me excited. So getting to work with new genetics and creating awesome environments where I get to play with this plant and learn about the plant and meet this plant's true potential. That's really what gets me going. So that's my favorite part of the job.
Cool. Natie?
It's the ability to work with this plant and just allow it to do good to the world through us. I mean, I just say all contact with the cannabis plant is therapeutic. Whether you live in a hemp home, whether you grow it, whether you smoke it, whether you take medicinally, it is therapeutic. And to be able to work with that kind of item, therapeutic item, 12, 18, 20 hours a day is just magnificent. I mean, it is just such a privilege. It is a teacher plant. Every day is a journey. If you allow yourself to be taught through it, it's an amazing journey to be on. And it doesn't take a lot of effort to get out of bed in the mornings.
Great. Harry?
Yeah, I'd say I'm very excited to be in research and development in the cannabis industry, because like almost every day we're learning new stuff. And what's even more exciting now, the research that we're doing, we're actually trying to develop something that is going to be used for COVID, and we're almost right there. And very soon, we're just asking people to just be on the lookout. We've already got something, but the major drawback that we're just having is we can't really claim that what we have is treating COVID. But we're just hoping soon with the regulations and stuff, government is going to allow us to present what we have, since we certainly believe is going to be helpful in this pandemic that we're in at the moment. So that's why I'm always excited every day, get to learn new stuff and exciting stuff, and definitely we're going somewhere with the cannabis industry. Yeah.
Right. Linda, thanks for pulling all the questions through in the background. Quickly, why do you love your job?
Wow, I guess it's the fact that cannabis is seen as a plant that brings people together, and obviously from the people that we've met, we've seen it do amazing things medicinally for them. I mean, just the other day, I met a lady who told me that her brother has been using it to help him with his HIV, and it just sort of brings people together, and it makes you very open in terms of sharing your problems and your situations. And ideally, you'd want to do that on a regular basis. But I think with cannabis, it just allows that to happen so easily with the transition. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's one of the most purposeful industries in the world, and a very exciting industry. But it also is an industry, it's a business, and it needs to be run on business principles. If any of you are watching, are interested in any of our courses, we do commercial cultivation courses, we do one-day courses, we do 3-month courses. Please check us out online, guys. I'd just like to thank all of you. I didn't think we'd have enough questions, but they've been flying through. So to all of you in the audience, thank you so much for all the questions. This is the first kind of Q&A session we've done, and we'll be doing more. Guys, have an amazing evening. Harry, good luck with your load shedding. We're out. Until next time. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Nice one. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye. Ciao. Ciao.
Bye-bye.